Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. I am David Millington, your host, and I'm the Director of Education at Next Level Purchasing Association. Today's webinar is part one of a four-part series on project management. Again, thank you to everyone for attending, and I hope that today's webinar will be filled with knowledge and information that you could use in your procurement practice as procurement professionals. So this course is based on, it's a retention webinar, and it's based on our procurement, professional procurement project management course. And it's a very, very, very in-depth course that goes into, and that's underpinned by the Project Management Institute's, the PMI's body of knowledge, and it goes deeply into the critical parameters of professional project management. With that said, first of all, I would like to before I go into the definition of what is a project and what is the PMI's definition of a project, I would like to remind us as procurement professionals in all of my webinars, in almost all of my articles and blogs that are procurement related, I refer to and I reflect on, and my thought processes are underpinned by the core purpose of the procurement function, because I believe in management by purpose and management that's underpinned by that core philosophy and that core purpose of why a particular function exists. And in the case of procurement, the procurement mandate or the core purpose of the procurement function is threefold. One is to support operations. Two is to protect our organizations as procurement professionals, to protect our organizations from risk. And three is to manage spend. So to manage spend, to protect our organizations from risk, and to support our operations. With that said, seeing that this is the core mandate and the reason why our jobs as procurement professionals exist, the reason why our own procurement function, supply chain exists, is this threefold mandate. Every project or every critical or major initiative should be underpinned by that mandate. So we go into what is the purpose of a project, and the Project Management Institute, the PMI, they define a project as a unique temporary endeavor with a set beginning and a set end. Another definition that we have seen is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques in order to meet very specific requirements. With that said, in the matter or the affair of requirements, and usually I give my caveats at the end, but I'm going to start off with a caveat. Caveat number one, the better we are as procurement professionals in understanding our customer requirements, the needs and requirements of our customers, the end users of the outputs or the products that are, or products or services that are created by our organizations, the better we are at understanding those specific requirements in a very prioritized way, and I say requirements, I mean the critical requirements, the better we will be at our functions and at our jobs. The more effective and efficient our procurement and supply chain processes will be if we understand in clear terms, in a very prioritized way, the most critical and sensitive requirements of our customers. The better we are at understanding that, the better we will be at our functions. With that said, I would advise you that every key project that we embark on in our space, in our professional space, in the procurement professional, should be aligned with an understanding of those needs and requirements. So the better we are at positioning and pivoting our projects and our key initiatives at meeting our customer requirements and specifications, the better we will be at, the better we will be at in terms of realizing our mandate of managing spend, protecting our organizations from risk, and supporting operations. So, according to the PMI, projects have 5 distinct phases: the initiation of a project, the planning of the task and the breakdown of the project, the actual executing of those tasks, and the monitoring and controlling of the project to assure that all key deliverables are being met with the right quality, and the timelines are being effectively managed, and the project is within the prescribed and agreed upon cost parameters. So cost, time, and quality. 3 critical factors that must be managed with all our projects. If our projects go over time, right, the cost will be escalated beyond the budget. If the quality of our projects or the deliverables are not meeting the specified quality requirements, they would also incur costs, because they will, in many cases, incur rework loops. And certain tasks will have to be done at a second and a third pass, escalating and expanding the time frame. Expanded time frames in projects equal to, as I say, time equal money. So we have to manage our projects and make sure we have effective monitoring and controlling mechanisms to assure that our projects realize the prescribed quality within the right time frame and at the right cost, and we control the cost, and the closing of the project. So initiation or initiating a project, planning the project, executing the project, monitoring and controlling and assuring that the quality, time, and cost variables and dynamics are under control, and the closing of a particular project. So the matter of initiating a project, and I'm very, very, I'm a stickler for doing the right projects and doing the right projects right. This is a very, 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 very important. Selecting the right projects to work on, seeing that we all have limited time, resource, we have limited funding, we have limited budgets. So selecting the right projects is very, very important, and to show that we have the necessary mechanisms and processes to guide us in, and the yardsticks and the benchmarks to assure that we select the right projects, and then doing the right projects right. And what I mean by that again is making sure that the agreed upon quality of the deliverables are met, making sure that the projects are within the cost parameters, and to assure that the projects are on time. This is what I mean by doing the right projects right. So with that said, there are many, many very important questions that we could ask in terms of if someone initiates a project. There's a whole list of critical questions that we could ask to sort of qualify that project, to see if a particular project relative to the current business context and the current business landscape situations, or the current situation of a business, to see if a project makes sense at a particular point in time. These are some of the questions that should be asked. What are the criteria that will be used to measure success or failure of a project? Who helped in the decision to choose this project? What resources will be available for this project, for a particular project? Do we have the right skill sets? Do we have the necessary tools in order to execute a project? Do we have enough monetary resources? Do we have the budget to realize a particular project? And how does a project fit within the priorities of the organization? In other words, would a particular project, is it a good strategic fit? Would a particular project aid or enable or improve an organization and its current situation? Or would it go counter that? So it's very, very important that we do our due diligence when it comes to initiating projects in our organizations. Also, what deliverables must be produced and monitored on the projects, and who will decide how to measure whether a project succeeds or fails. So these are some of the critical questions that must be asked to see if we are selecting the right project. And the earlier we ask these questions, the better it would be. We would have realize a better outcome. With that said, effective, and I'm going to reiterate, effective project selection is key. It is very important that we have the necessary mechanisms to select the right projects, and I can't reiterate this enough. Also, we should have prepare a portfolio for projects, because I recall going into an organization as a consultant some years ago, and this organization had 57 projects going on simultaneously. And some of those projects were going on for years. Projects that were supposed to be like 2 or 3 months in scope were going on for years. And very little was getting done, and there was a lot of frustration and low morale. And one way to guard against this type of situation is to assure that we have what I call a project portfolio. When we have a project portfolio, this would help to list all of the projects in a pipeline in a very, very ordered and ranked way, ranked according to, as we said in the previous slide, critical criteria, with a decision-making mechanism to see and to decide on which projects should be acted on first and why. And I'm going to get into this in the next slide, but it's very, very important as procurement professionals. If we look at our list of initiatives that we would like to embark on in our particular space, in the procurement space. So let's say we have 10 projects. I don't know any procurement department that has the time and resources and the capability to do 10 parallel projects. So we may have to select or do maybe 1 or 2 at a time, and we have to make sure that we have the right decision-making mechanisms with the right criteria to select which project or which projects we're going to do simultaneously and which ones we're going to do first. So how are we going to pipeline those projects? That's very, 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 very important. So with that said, I have here, it's a project portfolio mechanism. And please take a good look at this. If you all need help with deploying methodologies like this in your organization, please let me know. Please let me know. So when we look at this particular project portfolio list. For example, we see across these axes here you have the project description. Project number 2, for example, is implementing an inventory management system. Here, this first column here would be the net savings target by implementing this system. So it's very important that we align our projects to a dollar quantification, because one of the things that's very important with effective project management and project execution is the cost-benefit analysis. In other words, this project is going to cost the organization how much? What is it going to cost the organization? And then secondly is, what benefit would your organization get from initiating a particular project? So the idea is that the benefit should exceed the cost, and the greater the magnitude of that benefit exceeding the cost, the better your project would be. So if a project would cost $10,000 and the benefit would be $100,000 minus a $20,000 cost, so the net benefit would be $80,000, then your return on investment is 8 to 1. So this is a good project. But there are many other parameters in which we should look at the project outside of the cost. Here in this second column, we see here the impact of that particular project and the strategic fit. Is it a right strategic fit? And all of these parameters here, we score them on a scale of 1 to 10. So this particular project, implementing an inventory management system, has strong strategic fit. So it's scored 10 out of 10. In terms of time impact, the time it would take to execute project number 2, implementing an inventory management system, it's scored a 6. So in terms of this dimension, in terms of how long it would take, and I guess this is because it's a complex project, so it would take a longer time to execute, right? So relative to the time impact and complexity, this project is inferior to the first project, improving timeliness of soup serves, right? This scored a 9 out of 10, and this one scored a 6 out of 10. In terms of cost benefit, they both projects have a very, very, very good potential return on investment. In terms of technical feasibility, in this case, this organization, the technical capability that they have internally, or in terms of external capabilities, in terms of consultants, for example, they would score 10 out of 10. This second project is not as bad. It scored 8 out of 10, but yet still inferior to the first project. And going across the list, if you average out these scores and you use a scoring system out of 100, project number 1 scored a 98, project number 2 scored an 85. And if you use the American grading system from where it suggests that from 90 to 100 is an A, project number 1 is an A. And again, the American scoring system from 80 to 89 is a B. Then project number 2 is a B. The third project, if you look at this, it scores poorly across the board. It's a high technical capability. Internally and externally, so to do the project, they do have the skills to do the project, but this particular project is low value relative to the others. It's not a good strategic fit. It seems as though this project would take a significant amount of time, and the cost benefit is not worth it. So this particular project, out of 100, would have scored 48 out of 100. And according to the American grading system, that's an F. So the action here, or the decision relative to these three projects would be to kill this project or just forget it. Forget about this project. Number three. And if the organization has the resources to do they only have the resources to do one at a time, then, I would recommend that project number one is done first. You do this one first, do this one second, but manage time. Okay, remember the time impact here? Pay attention to time and make sure that you have effective time management strategies in place to make sure that this project does not get impacted by time overrun, which would diminish the cost benefit and the profitability of this project. So in this case, this project should be done first, this project should be done secondly, and this project should be killed. Again, the primary focus must be made on doing the right projects right. Very important. So we're going to get into some of the critical documents in project management, and one document that is very, very important, one of the most critical documents in project management, is the project charter. And I'm a fan of one-page project charters. Please do your best to avoid 2 or 3 or 4-page project charters, because some of the detail would get lost in the mix. One-page project charter, in my opinion, is a lot easier to manage. To have everything compressed into one page means that the documentation and the verbiage is very, very, very succinct and very to the point. And this is what you want. So the more words and verbiage and variables you put into any document, in particular project charter, we would increase exponentially the chance of having some type of bad outcome or some type of misunderstanding or some type of mishap with the project. So a project charter establishes the project as something that the organization officially intends to do. So it's an official document. It provides authorization for the project manager to do the work or to execute and to plan and to execute and to monitor and control the project and all of the processes that underpin those steps. And it confirms that the management has explicitly approved the project, because a good project charter would have some signature boxes for the key stakeholders to sign off that they approve the budget for a particular project that's underpinned by the time parameters, the necessary assumptions, and the necessary deliverables and scope. And it serves as a basic for which the project plan could be developed. So the project plan would be extrapolated from the project charter. And in terms of the anatomy of the project charter, we see here these are some of the critical variables. The project objective, right? Everything, again, should be linked to a purpose and an objective in everything that we do. And the objective, the project objective, again, should be symmetrically aligned to the corporate mandate. And it should be aligned with the procurement mandate, which should be aligned to the corporate mandate and objectives of the key stakeholders. Very important that the scope, the project scope, is detailed and understood in the project charter. And scope is one of the most critical variables in project management. The science, the understanding of project scope. And essentially, the project scope defines the key goals of a project, and it also defines what a project is supposed to do and what is not supposed to do. It defines the boundaries, the parameters, which process, which business unit, which part of the business unit, which part of the process, the start and the stop points, of the project. This is the scope. So it's very important that we manage the project scope and guard against what we call scope creep. Scope creep is what happens when variables and requests are added on top of the agreed scope. And what this does is that it brings a degree of complexity and cost to a project, as it adds variables that could have exponential impact on quality and time and cost. So a good project manager is able to manage the project scope. It also, part of it, the anatomy of a project charter is that it defines the authority, who the project manager is, the roles and responsibilities, the constraints, the assumptions, the milestones in terms of time, the necessary change management strategy, and the project cost, the cost or estimate, a very good estimate of the cost of the project. So this should be part of the project charter, including, I also like to include the potential return on investment in the project charter. And the way I normally do this is to under promise and over deliver. So if I do my due diligence and I see that a particular project has, let's say, a 20-to-1 return on investment, I would say 10-to-1, because I rather at the end of the project to over deliver and under promise than to over promise and under deliver. Because we lose our professional credibility if we do this. So the next slide here, we see a one-page project charter. Okay, this is something that I prepared myself, and we see here in this case. There was a problem statement. There was something in particular that an organization a problem that they needed to solve, and so the nature of the problem was clearly defined in this statement, what we call a problem statement. And here I listed the scope of the project. Okay, we see here in this case from the customer placing order to being served. Nothing more, nothing less. That was the scope from the time a customer placed an order to the customer was served. That was the scope of the project. And then I put the assumptions here, the constraints that this project would encounter, the goals of the project. Down here, we see the preliminary project plan in terms, it has the different phases of work that had to be deliverables and the necessary dates, the target dates. And down here, we had, last section on the bottom, we have here the team members and their roles and responsibilities. A very, very, now caveat number 2. With every project, if you state a business case, and I'm not talking about don't write a book, 4 to 6 sentence business case, you would increase exponentially the buy-in and the willingness of your senior managers and executives investing in that project and giving you the green light if we prepare a business case. A well-written business case creates a sense of urgency, and it also highlights that the fact that if a particular project is not embarked on to address a certain issue, it clearly stipulates and articulates the impact to the organization and to its customers. So again, a good business case articulates the reason why a project should be undertaken at a particular point in time, and it also articulates that if the project is not done at a particular point in time, it articulates the impact on the organization and the customers. This is a good business case. So we see in this case here, the business case for this process at this organization, it goes as such. If a project is not deployed to improve the soup serve process at XYZ Cafe, XYZ Cafe will be exposed to line buildups, potential loss of market share, of market position, and business. And the store would be weakened. This is a very, very, very clear, simple, but powerful business case, as it creates a sense of urgency. And if you could identify a problem that you're trying to solve by deploying a project, by having your organization invest in a project, you would also get, you would increase exponentially the buy-in and the funding for your projects. So this is caveat number 3. So you prepare a problem statement, an effective problem statement, again, 4 to 6 sentences. A good problem statement states how long a particular issue has been occurring. It also states the impact in terms of time and money that particular problem has on an organization and its customers. This is the anatomy of a good problem statement. So if you have these 2 things, in addition to your scope, your goals, your time management plan, and your roles and responsibilities with your scope and constraints and assumptions, then you would have a dynamic project charter. You present a document like this one here to your senior executives, they review it, you stand a much better chance of getting the buy-in to execute your project. And that's important, to get that buy-in. So we press for time, but I'm going to go through here in this webinar 3 of the 4 major project management planning documents. The Gantt chart I'm going to do in webinar number 2. And these are the work breakdown structure, which breaks down the task that you would have to execute a project. It breaks it down. And then you have a network diagram, which deploys those tasks into boxes, similar to a flow chart. And then a risk management plan to assure that your projects do not yield poor quality and your projects do not have time and cost overrun. Because every project, there's a risk of not meeting the quality standards. There's a potential risk that there would be time overrun and cost overrun. So the risk plan, the risk mitigation, and project risk management strategy would help to guard against those mishaps. So as far as a work breakdown structure, this is a work breakdown structure that I prepared for doing a survey, providing a survey and analysis. Right? So here we see that there are 5 major tasks that have to be done. 1 would be to define the purpose of the survey. 2 would be to determine the survey measurement system. 3 would be to develop the content of the questions. 4 would be to test the reliability of the questions. And 5 would be to deploy the survey. So what the work breakdown structure does is that each one of these main categories, it breaks them down into what I would call work packages or chunks of work that are manageable and clearly defined. So you would see, to define the purpose of a survey is broken down into 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. These here are all the categories of define the purpose of a survey. So 1.1 would be to determine the current status or situation. 1.2 to determine what to do, what do we need to do, and how, and know. What do we need to know? Okay, so the categories on this side would be who is responsible, the number of days, the start of each task and the end of each task, and the degree of completion, and identification of which of these items are on the critical path. The critical path in project management must be managed. The critical part is a particular task or set of tasks that, if not done effectively and done on time, could delay the entire project. So, for example, 1.3 was defined as a task on the critical path. 2.2 was also defined as a task on the critical path, meaning that if these tasks are not done and done on time, if they're not done on time, they will delay the entire project. So here's your work breakdown structure. So we see 1.1 has 7 days to be done. It would start on 2/7 and would end on 2/14. In this case, it was 100% done. And we track all our project work this way. This is a very, 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 very important, critical tool in terms of breaking down our workload, understanding them in terms of the start and the end points, and who is responsible, and the degree of completion, and how to manage the critical path. It's a very, very nice, clean, visual way of managing projects. Then we have the network diagram, which, again, the 5 major tasks, and it uses more of a flow chart methodology in terms of how the task would be executed. I personally prefer this method, but some people they're more visual and they prefer the flow chart method. But both of them are very, 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 very effective. This is what we call the network diagram. And here we have our risk plan. This is one way of doing it. There are other ways of managing risk as far as projects are concerned. But the essential anatomy of a risk management plan, it would look at identification. Of course, you identify the particular risk, okay? And then we would determine the probability of that risk occurring. Is it low, medium, or high? And then we would determine the impact if a particular risk is realized, or identified risk is realized. What is the degree of impact on the customers and our organization? And we should always think customer first in terms of impact. And if a particular risk or failure happens, then what is the prescribed action? And of course, who is responsible for deploying that risk? So this is a risk management or risk plan for effectively managing our projects. So with that said, I'm going to leave the floor open for any Q&A. Do we have any questions? If you have any questions, if you could please send me a message in the chat box, I'll deeply appreciate it. And I hope you all enjoyed today's webinar. Do I have any questions? If there are any questions, just send me a note in the chat box. Okay, so far I don't see any questions. Oh, do you have examples that we can utilize for the project charter and other documents that you have shared? Do you have examples that we can utilize for the project charter and other documents? Okay, so Andrea, are you asking for like blank templates? Oh, yes. Yes, yes. I could provide you with those. If you need these slides, I could send you the slides of the webinar, and I could also send you some templates that you could use. Some people would use Microsoft Project, or you could just do the same work in Excel, Microsoft Excel. But yes, I could send you some of this material. And would you like also a template for the project portfolio? Remember the portfolio, how we selected the project? Okay, there you go. Okay, all right. So I'm going to leave you all with the last caveat, and that is to be very, very, very strategic with your work. Okay, so let 2019 be a year where we are very, very strategic with our procurement function, and we manage them in a very, very, very strategic way. And to understand that the higher up someone moves in the corporation, the less detail they like to see. Seems to be a natural order of things. They don't like to be bombarded with, unnecessary details. So again, with that said, remember I mentioned a one-page project charter. Okay, remember the critical components: scope. Make sure you have the right scope, and you don't let people overscope your projects, because people will say, "Oh, well, could you add this and could you add that?" And many times, we want to be collaborative. We want to have the can-do mentality, but what we can do is to bury ourselves in terms of overscoping a project. So don't be afraid, right, to push back and say, I think this scope is appropriate. And of course, you state your reasons why. So things that are outside of a particular scope for a project, you may want to suggest, perhaps that could be another project that we could do. However, there are times when you would embark on a particular project and you would realize that the scope is too small. So in this case, you sit the same stakeholders you had at the initial meeting when you were initiating the project initially, and you said, look, I recommend that we expand the scope to this point, and you get the buy-in. That's the key. So the scope, the business case, the problem statement. Would you all like examples of a good business case, examples of a good problem statement? Would you like examples of that, Andrea? Because this would help you in designing your projects effectively. All right, you may have to do some translating of the examples that I would send you into your environment, but this would help you a lot. So remember, 4 to 6 sentence business case, 4 to 6 sentence problem statement. In other words, what are you trying to improve? What are you trying to accomplish? What organizational gaps you're trying to close? How are you trying to better, again, manage your spend? What do you identify as a project? Is it to manage spend? Is it to protect the organization from risk? Is it a project to better support operations, right? What are you trying what problem you're trying to solve? So effective problem statement, 4 to 6 sentences, right? Remember the anatomy of a good problem statement. So how long a particular issue has been occurring, What is the impact in terms of time, in terms of finance, and the impact on the customer? Always keep the customer in mind, and the stakeholders and the business. 4 to 6 sentences. Put the dollar amounts there. Okay? People, when they see the money, their eyes open up. And again, an effective business case, right? You need money. You need the authorization to spend time and money and skills and other resources on a project. Why? Why should we give you money, right? So you would articulate, right, a good business case. Again, 4 to 6 sentences, right? You state if this project or project is not deployed to address problem XYZ or ABC, this here would be the impact on the customer and the business. In other words, you're saying, I've told you, I've done my due diligence. Here are the figures from the problem statement. Here's the business case. Don't you are told, right? This creates a sense of urgency. Once you have that urgency, then you lay out your timeline. You lay out your scope. Don't overscope yourself. Remember, scope creep. Managed by managing and preventing scope creep. Your project charter, very important. You could either use a network diagram to lay out your task, or you could use the work breakdown structure format. And again, manage your project. Look at the risk. How could your projects fail? So you have your risk management plan. Okay, who, what, when, how, why risk could occur, or who, what, when, how, why things could go wrong, and here's my response plan in addressing those risks. So I hope that you all enjoyed today's webinar, and I hope that you all found the content and the delivery an effective one. I'm very passionate about seeing you all succeed. If you need any help with what I've lectured on today, let me know. There's no charge. This is why we're here. Just shoot me an email, give me a call. My number is, and I'm going to put my number here. My number is 860-994-8193. All right. My email is dmillington@nextlevelpurchasing.com. Right. This is why we're here, and we're very passionate. I am very passionate about seeing you succeed. So if you need any advice on this material or any other webinar that I gave, any other material, you call me, you let me know, pick my brains, and I would help you. That's why I'm here, and I want to see you succeed. So again, a lot of this, most of this, the mass majority of this content came from this course, professional purchasing for professional purchasing project management. I really enjoyed this course. I think it's very, very, very robust material, and it would really help you in your mandate of managing spend, supporting operations, and protecting your organizations from risk. Again, thank you very much for attending today's webinar. I'm going to stay online for a couple of minutes in case you have any further questions. I'm going to be here. Any further questions, you let me know. Okay, so I think that is it for today. Again, thank you very much. It was an honor to lecture today, and I hope that you enjoyed the webinar. You're very welcome. You're very welcome, Andrea. I'm happy you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure and an honor. Thank you, and have a great day.